He may even identify himself with it and believe that he is what he appears to be.
Hello and welcome back to the NCE Study Guide. This is Glenn. First off, I just want to say thank you to everyone who's reached out about the Saturday study group. It's been such a pleasure to get to know so many of you, hearing your stories, your goals, your questions, and the vision that you have for your future as counselors. It's a lot of fun. I look forward to those Saturday get-togethers. Those conversations have really helped shape the direction of these study modules, making sure that they're truly aligned with what you need, both in terms of the counselor work behavior areas and the KCREP core areas covered on the NCE. So right now I'm in the process of building a brand new Patreon exclusive study library, 91 focused audio modules in total, possibly a few more. Each one is short, structured, and tightly designed to help you study smarter. They'll all be available on Patreon, and I've set it up to be really affordable and flexible. You can pay as little as $5 a month or as much as $20 a month. It's totally up to you. Every tier gets full access to the entire library. The only difference is if you're at the $20 level and you want something custom made for you, I'll make a personalized module just for you. You'll just need to send me your request and I'll build it out. So what you're about to hear now is an overview of what this new Patreon library includes and how it is structured. The first batch of modules is already live and waiting for you on Patreon, and I'll be releasing the rest over the next couple of weeks. I expect the full library to be completed by mid-May. The nice thing about this setup is that you can subscribe for as long as you need it, and when you're done, you're done. It's built to work with your timeline, not the other way around. And of course, I'll also continue publishing free episodes here on the main podcast, especially those inspired by questions and discussions from our Saturday study group sessions. And if you're interested in joining one of these free Saturday groups, just shoot me an email at ncestudyguide@gmail.com. Thanks for listening, for studying along, and for all the work you're putting into this journey. Now let's get to the overview, and after the overview, I'll share with you the very first module. Enjoy.
Welcome to the NCE Study Guide. You know, today's exploration is going to be a little bit different. And I think it's going to be really valuable for you. Instead of dissecting a single theory or study, we're doing a deep dive into a resource we've actually built ourselves.
Yeah, built specifically to help you conquer the National Counselor Examination.
Exactly. It's the NCE Study Guide Patreon module library.
That's right. So if you've been following along with our discussions on foundational counseling ideas, well, you can think of this library as sort of the next logical step.
Okay.
It's a really carefully structured collection, audio modules, all designed to be a focused and, we hope, effective tool in your NCE prep journey.
So our goal today is pretty straightforward, really. We just want to give you a clear picture of what this library actually offers.
And importantly, how its structure is designed to mirror the NCE exam itself.
Right. We want to give you an inside look, basically, show you how this tool could maybe make your studying feel more targeted, maybe a bit less overwhelming.
And it's pretty comprehensive. I mean, there are 91 focused audio modules in there.
91. Wow.
Yeah, and they're all intentionally organized. They line up with the specific sections you're actually going to see on the NCE.
Okay, perfect. So let's jump right into part one of the library then.
Sounds good.
This part has 42 modules, you said, and they're all centered around the 6 counselor work behavior areas.
Exactly. And these counselor work behavior areas, well, they're really significant.
Why is that?
Because they make up a huge chunk of the NCE. You're looking at roughly 55 to 65% of the test.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah. So they get right to the heart of the practical skills and the knowledge you'll actually be using as a working counselor.
Makes sense. Practical stuff. Okay, so the first area is professional practice and ethics. Now, this isn't just about memorizing a list of rules.
Oh, not at all. Definitely not. The modules here, they're designed to help you really internalize the principles, from things like the ACA Code of Ethics. You'll run into realistic scenarios in the modules, ones that challenge you to navigate those tricky situations. Things involving, say, informed consent.
Right.
And you should think of that not just as signing a form, but as this ongoing conversation you have with your client.
Good point.
And then there's confidentiality, of course, including those really crucial exceptions like duty to warn and mandated reporting and boundary management. But the key thing here, I think, is understanding that ethics isn't some separate subject you study over here. It's really the lens. It's how you should be looking at all your counseling work.
That makes so much sense. Okay, so next up is intake, assessment, and diagnosis.
Yeah.
This is where you first meet the client, start figuring things out.
Exactly. These modules cover, well, everything from doing those vital initial interviews to forming accurate clinical impressions.
Okay.
You'll learn about doing a mental status exam, how to differentiate between different symptoms people present with, and using various assessment methods effectively.
Yeah.
We also dig into the DSM-5-TR criteria, obviously, and important psychometric concepts like, reliability and validity.
Yeah. Remind me quickly.
Sure. So think of reliability as like, does the test give consistent results if you take it again? And validity is, does it actually measure the thing it says it measures?
Got it. Consistent and accurate.
Pretty much. And the focus here is really making sure your assessment strategies directly tie into understanding the client's issues and ultimately their treatment goals.
Okay. Following that, we have areas of clinical focus. Now, this sounds like it covers a really wide range of client experiences.
It definitely does. This domain, it focuses on your ability to recognize and respond effectively to all the diverse reasons people come to counseling.
Right.
So the modules cover common challenges, mood disorders, anxiety disorders, substance use, personality disorders, the impact of trauma. But importantly, we also integrate lifespan development models. Think of someone like Erickson, his idea that adolescence is key for identity, and multicultural considerations too, just to make sure you're really seeing the client in their full context.
Crucial. Okay, then we move to treatment planning. Because it's not enough just to understand the client, right? You need a roadmap.
Precisely. A clear plan for how to help them move forward. So these modules explore how you create collaborative, well-defined treatment plans.
Collaborative is key there.
Absolutely. You'll learn about setting SMART goals, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound, and how different theoretical approaches like maybe CBT or person-centered therapy actually guide how you structure that treatment.
I see.
We also cover the ethical side of treatment planning, the importance of clear documentation, think SOP notes, and of course, how to track client progress effectively. Treatment planning really is that bridge, between the assessment piece and the actual interventions you end up using.
And speaking of interventions, what counselors actually do in the room, the next area is counseling skills and interventions.
Exactly. So this section really zooms in on those fundamental micro skills. Things like active listening, reflection, empathy.
The basics, but essential.
Totally essential. And also more specialized intervention techniques. You'll explore, say, CBT techniques or Gestalt's empty chair exercise, maybe mindfulness strategies from DBT.
Okay.
And this brings up a really key question. How do you pick the right intervention for this specific client in this specific situation?
Yeah, that's the trick.
Right. So these modules aim to give you that kind of practical understanding, help you make those choices.
Okay. And the final area in part 1 is core counseling attributes. This feels a bit different, like it's less about techniques and more about the counselor themselves.
That's a great way to put it, actually. These modules explore those essential qualities, both personal and professional, that really underpin effective counseling.
Like what?
Well, things like cultivating empathy, genuineness, cultural humility, self-awareness. We also touch on the importance of recognizing burnout signs, compassion fatigue, and having strategies for self-care, for maintaining your own well-being.
Super important.
It really is. And you'll also think about your role in the wider profession, including things like gatekeeping responsibilities.
So wrapping up part 1 then, it really sounds like getting a solid handle on these 6 counselor work behavior areas is, well, non-negotiable for NCE prep.
Without a doubt, seriously. Not only are they a huge part of the exam score-wise.
Right, that 55-65%.
Exactly, but they also directly mirror the day-to-day reality of being a professional counselor.
True.
So these modules, they give you a really valuable chance to kind of check your understanding in these core areas, see where you might need to focus your study time a bit more.
Okay, that makes sense. Now let's shift gears. Let's look at part 2 of the library. This one has 49 modules, you said?
Yep, 49. And these are all aligned with the 8 K-TREP core areas.
K-TREP areas, okay.
Yeah, and these K-TREP core areas, they really provide the theoretical foundation, the bedrock for counseling practice.
And how much of the exam is this part?
This section accounts for roughly 35 to 45% of the NCE. Still significant.
Still pretty chunky, yeah. Okay, the first one here is professional counseling orientation and ethical practice. Now, we already talked about ethics in part 1. How's this different? Is it more foundational?
That's a good way to think about it. Yeah, it's a helpful distinction. So While Part 1 emphasizes applying ethics in those practical situations, Part 2 digs more into, say, the history of the counseling profession itself, clarifies the differences between licensure, certification, accreditation.
Okay, the structures.
Right. And it gives a deeper dive into ethical decision-making models. You'll also learn about the key professional organizations like ACA, NBCC, and their specific guidelines.
I see.
And you can expect scenarios here too, but maybe more focused on testing your grasp of ethical responses based on those foundational principles, especially around confidentiality and informed consent again.
Got it. Okay, next area. Social and cultural diversity. So critical.
Absolutely essential. These modules really hammer home the importance of cultural responsiveness in, well, every single aspect of counseling.
Every aspect.
Yeah. You'll explore concepts like power dynamics, privilege, intersectionality, different models of identity development. And the practical side involves recognizing microaggressions, understanding maybe issues of cultural mistrust, and figuring out how to implement interventions that are genuinely sensitive to diverse cultural backgrounds.
Right.
What's really insightful here, I think, is seeing how this area truly informs and shapes everything else. Ethical choices, assessment practices, the counseling methods you choose.
It connects to everything.
It really does.
Okay. After that, human growth and development. This gives us the framework for understanding people across their whole lives. Yeah.
Exactly. That's the core of it. These modules cover the big developmental theorists, Erikson, Piaget, Maslow, plus attachment theories from Bowlby and Ainsworth.
The classics.
The classics. And the NCE will test your ability to actually apply these developmental frameworks, to understand life transitions, how identity forms, what helps people be resilient at different life stages.
Makes sense. Then there's career development. It's interesting how often career stuff is tangled up with everything else in a person's life.
It really is, isn't it? So these modules introduce those foundational career theories, like Holland's RISEC model, Super's lifespan life-space theory, Krumboltz's social learning stuff.
Okay.
You'll also learn about vocational assessments, the whole process of career decision-making, how multicultural factors play into career paths, and, effective ways to address career concerns in counseling.
Good stuff. Okay, the fifth case rep area. Counseling and helping relationships. This sounds like it gets right to the core of therapy.
Oh, absolutely central and heavily represented on the NCE for sure. These modules explore the major counseling theories, person-centered, CBT, Gestalt, etc., how to apply those fundamental microskills we talked about earlier, and the complexities of the therapeutic process itself.
Like what specifically?
Like building rapport, understanding and dealing with resistance when it comes up, repairing ruptures if they happen in the relationship.
Right.
You can definitely expect scenario-based questions here, asking you to pick and apply the right interventions based on different theories.
Okay. Next up is group counseling and group work. Individual therapy gets a lot of focus, but groups offer unique things too.
That's so true. Unique benefits, unique challenges. These modules dive into group dynamics, including established models like Tuckman's stages forming, storming, norming.
Remember those.
And Yalom's therapeutic factors. You'll see questions about how groups form, different leadership styles for groups, ethical issues specific to group work, and how to manage diverse group makeups effectively. It's really important to see how those individual counseling skills need to be adapted, to work well in a group setting.
Right, it's a different dynamic. Okay, seventh area, assessment and testing. We touched on assessment in part 1, but this sounds maybe more theoretical. About the tools.
Precisely. Good distinction. These modules go deeper into those psychometric principles we mentioned: reliability, validity, standard error of measurement.
Right.
You'll get familiar with commonly used assessment tools like the MMPI or the WAYS. The focus here is really on your ability to choose the right assessment for the situation, interpret the results responsibly, and understand all the ethical stuff around testing, like cultural sensitivity, potential bias in tests. That kind of thing.
Very important. Okay, finally, research and program evaluation, highlighting that evidence-based practice piece.
Yes, exactly. These modules cover basic research methods, quantitative, qualitative, key stats concepts like mean, standard deviation, correlation, the basics, and different ways to evaluate if counseling programs are actually working. You'll probably get questions asking you to interpret some research findings or explain how research informs your actual clinical work.
So, Part 2 really lays down that strong theoretical and ethical foundation that guides effective counseling.
Absolutely. And by linking these theoretical ideas back to the practical scenarios from part one, these modules really aim to deepen your understanding and make you feel more confident about practicing ethically and effectively.
That sounds really well integrated.
Yeah.
Now let's talk a bit more about the modules themselves. How are they structured? You said about 20, 30 minutes each.
Yeah, around that length. We wanted them to be manageable, easy to fit into a study schedule.
Makes sense.
And each one follows this consistent format, which we designed to really maximize learning. It kicks off with a dynamic case study,
Okay.
presented in a narrative style, using short, kind of engaging scenes. And these scenes, they're key because they bring maybe 2 or 3 core concepts to life in a really practical context.
So it's not just dry theory. You actually see it in action, like in a real counseling situation.
Exactly. That's the whole idea. This story-based approach, it's meant to help you truly integrate the information, not just memorize isolated facts for the test.
Right.
By seeing how theory and ethics actually play out through these fictional clients and counselors, you start to build, hopefully, a deeper understanding. You start to think more like a counselor.
I like that. Thinking like a counselor. What comes after the case study?
So after the story part, there's a clear, concise breakdown of the key theories, terms, concepts that were just illustrated,
Okay.
with explanations that are really tightly aligned with what you actually need to know for the NCE.
Test focused.
Definitely. And then every single module wraps up with either a short quiz or maybe a reflection activity just to help solidify what you just learned.
That sounds like a really effective loop. Engaging story, clear explanation, then reinforcement. Definitely better than just passively reading a textbook.
We certainly hope so.
And I understand all this content is created by Glenn Osland.
Yes, that's right. Glenn brings a really interesting background to this. He actually has a master's in folklore and mythology.
Oh, cool.
As well as his Master of Science in clinical mental health counseling. So his goal is really to make this complex information not just accessible, but also, highly effective for both your NCE prep and your future work as a counselor.
That's a great combination of skills. And for anyone listening who might be curious about the voices, like ours, it's worth mentioning these are AI-powered voice personalities doing the narration in the modules, right?
That is correct. Yeah, using AI voices allows for really consistent delivery across all 91 modules.
Consistency.
Yeah, and it frees Glenn up to focus on what's most important. Creating and organizing the actual content, making sure it's accurate and helpful.
Makes total sense. Now, for people listening who are thinking, okay, this sounds really useful, this might be exactly what I need.
Yeah.
How can they actually get access to this whole library, all 91 modules?
Right. So full unrestricted access to the entire library, all 91 modules, is available through a Patreon subscription.
Patreon. Okay.
Yeah, it's for a pretty reasonable monthly fee.
Yeah.
And subscribing doesn't just empower your own studying, it also directly supports the ongoing development of this whole resource, helping us keep it updated and maybe even expand it for future counselors down the line.
It really does sound like a potentially more cost-effective option compared to some of those big, expensive commercial NCE prep programs out there.
We think so, and the flexibility of audio is a huge plus, too.
How so?
Well, whether you like to listen while you're commuting or maybe while you're exercising or during dedicated study blocks, you can engage with the material in whatever way fits your learning style and your schedule best. It's not like you have to be chained to a desk.
That flexibility is huge. So, okay, if this structured story-based approach sounds good to someone, if they think this library would be a real asset for their NCE prep, how do they join? How do they become part of the NCE Study Guide Patreon community?
Yeah, we'd love for you to join us. We definitely extend a warm invitation to join us over on Patreon. We've set up 3 membership tiers. There's a $5, a $10, and a $20 per month tier. But here's the important part. Every single tier gets the exact same access to the complete library of content, all 91 modules.
Oh, that's great. So people can just choose based on their budget.
Exactly. Choose the tier that feels right for your budget and, the value you feel you're getting from these resources.
That's fantastic that the core content is available to everyone, regardless of the tier. Now, I think there was an extra perk for the $20 tier.
Yes, that's right. The $20 tier includes something pretty unique. It gives you the ability to actually request personalized modules.
Personalized, how does that work?
Well, if there's a specific topic or area where you feel you need extra help or maybe you want a deeper dive, you can request a module tailored to address those specific study needs.
Wow, that's really cool. It really does sound like a supportive community you're building there. And just to underline it again, listener support on Patreon is what makes all this possible, right? Keeps it going.
Absolutely, 100%. Your support on Patreon is what enables us to keep creating high-quality content. It allows us to continue offering our free weekly study groups.
Yes, the study groups.
And it helps us expand the resources available for everyone getting ready for the NCE. We're honestly just incredibly grateful for your engagement, your support, and your dedication to joining this really important profession.
Hear, hear. And we also love it if you find value in what we do. Maybe leave a 5-star rating for the main NCE Study Guide podcast, wherever you happen to listen.
Yes, please. That really helps other people find this free resource.
It's a simple thing, but leaving that 5-star rating is genuinely a powerful way to help your fellow aspiring counselors discover the podcast and all the free content we offer.
Definitely.
So if the Patreon library sounds like the right next move for your NCE journey, we really encourage you to join the community. And don't forget those free weekly study groups we mentioned.
Yep. Details on how to join those are right there on the Patreon page, too. You really can do this. We're here to support you in studying smarter, feeling more confident as you get ready for this really big milestone in your counseling career.
And now here is the first module in this Patreon library. Enjoy. Welcome to the Patreon library for the NCE Study Guide.
Hello, everyone.
Today, we're really going to dive deep into something fundamental for counselors, especially if you're prepping for the NCE. We're talking about ethics.
Right. And instead of just listing principles, we thought we'd walk through a pretty realistic case study. It helps make these ideas much more concrete, you know?
Exactly. So we've got this scenario featuring Jamie. She's a counseling intern just getting started, and she's working with her very first client.
And that client is Alex. He's 17, dealing with anxiety and some depression. So a pretty common situation you might encounter.
Yeah. And our plan is to go through Jamie's experiences with Alex, almost scene by scene. As we do, we'll pull out those key ethical terms and, the challenges she runs into.
We'll be hitting on things like informed consent, confidentiality, the big ones, but also the tension between, like, your own personal beliefs and the professional code you follow.
And also autonomy. Beneficence, doing good nonmaleficence, avoiding harm. We'll even touch on tricky situations like dual relationships and the idea of justice, fairness, fidelity, veracity. Lots to unpack.
Definitely. And we'll see how ethical decision-making models kind of fit into the picture, too.
Right. So after we walk through Jamie's story, we'll wrap up with a mini quiz, some NCE-style questions to help you lock in these concepts.
Sounds like a plan. Let's get into the case study, then. Jamie's starting her internship at a community mental health center. First client, Alex.
Okay, scene 1. This is all about setting the stage ethically. Informed consent and confidentiality. So before the actual counseling starts, Jamie sits down with Alex, and because he's 17, his parents too.
Yeah, that's crucial with minors. She explains the whole informed consent process, what counseling involves, what they can expect.
And a really big piece of this is confidentiality. She outlines what stays private, but also, importantly, the limits.
Right. Specifically mentioning, if there's a risk of harm to Alex himself or to someone else. That has to be clear up front.
She also talks about the process, session structure. And this is important. She clarifies she's an intern working under supervision.
That transparency about being an intern is so vital. It manages expectations, lets them know there's oversight. It's just honest practice.
Absolutely. Now, during this, Alex's mom asks a very practical question. Like if Alex talks about, say, drugs or his girlfriend, is that confidential?
It's a great question, and one parents often have. Jamie confirms, yes, generally those conversations are private between her and Alex.
But she circles back to that key exception. Unless safety is a concern. It's that careful balance, right? Building trust with Alex, but also upholding that duty to protect.
Spot on. And after this discussion, everyone's on board, and both Alex and his parents sign the consent form?
So this first scene really nails down those two pillars.
Yeah.
Informed consent, everyone understanding and agreeing, and confidentiality, the promise of privacy, with those crucial safety exceptions.
Okay, scene 2. This one brings up something many new counselors, and experienced ones too, grapple with. Personal values versus professional ethics.
Right. So later on, Alex starts opening up more. He mentions using marijuana, drinking alcohol on weekends, and also talks about being sexually active.
Now for Jamie, this bumps up against her personal values. The scenario mentions she has a religious upbringing, and these behaviors conflict with her beliefs.
This is such a common crossroads. You have your own moral compass, but your professional role demands something specific.
Exactly. The ethical requirement here is non-judgmental acceptance and care. Your personal feelings can't interfere with providing effective support.
And Jamie does a good job here. Even though she might be feeling, uncomfortable inside, she focuses externally. She uses active listening.
She works to understand Alex's perspective, what's triggering his anxiety, keeping it client-centered. She consciously sets aside her personal judgment.
It really shows that difference between personal morality, what I think is right or wrong, and professional ethics, the standards we all agree to follow as counselors,
Yeah.
like respecting client diversity and autonomy.
Precisely. She's prioritizing the professional ethical stance here.
Okay, moving to scene 3. This gets into autonomy, beneficence, and nonmaleficence. Alex starts talking about feeling really trapped, especially by his dad's strict rules.
And then he says something that definitely sets off alarm bells for any counselor. He says sometimes he wishes he wasn't here.
Yeah, that phrase requires immediate attention. Even if it's vague, you have to explore it.
Right. Jamie does. She assesses for suicidal ideation. The key finding here is, after asking more, she determines there's no current plan or intent. But she doesn't just dismiss it.
No, and this is where those principles come in. She respects Alex's autonomy by validating his feelings. She doesn't say, oh, don't feel that way. She acknowledges how tough things are for him.
That's the autonomy piece. Then there's beneficence doing good. She checks in frequently about these feelings, suggests coping strategies. She's actively trying to help.
And crucially, non-maleficence doing no harm. She consults her supervisor about Alex's statement.
Yes. That consultation is key for non-maleficence here. It ensures she's not missing something, getting a second opinion on the risk level, making sure her approach is sound and not inadvertently harmful. It's a safety net.
It really shows how these principles aren't separate boxes. They work together, especially in these high-stakes moments.
Okay, scene 4. Now we get into dual relationships and justice. This one's unexpected. Jamie is at a community picnic for her church.
Oh.
And she runs into Alex and his mother there. Turns out they belong to the same congregation. Jamie had no idea.
Wow, yeah. That's what you call an unintentional dual relationship. You've got the therapist-client role, and now suddenly this shared community social context.
Her reaction is pretty natural. She feels awkward, leaves quickly. She's recognizing instinctively, uh-oh, this could be complicated.
And it gets brought up. In the next session, Alex says something like, weird seeing you there. Do we, know each other now? Puts Jamie on the spot.
So what does she do? First, documentation. Always smart to note these kinds of incidents. Then, the essential step. She talks to her supervisor about this potential dual relationship.
That consultation is everything in these situations. They discuss the risks, how to manage it, the decision. It's manageable, but boundaries need to be crystal clear.
Right. So Jamie then reassures Alex. She explains that seeing each other at church won't change their counseling work. The professional relationship stays separate, protecting that therapeutic space.
But Jamie also does some internal work here. She reflects on potential biases, like, does sharing this community connection unconsciously affect how she sees or treats Alex or his family?
And that reflection connects directly to the principle of justice, ensuring fair, equitable treatment for Alex, regardless of any outside connections or similarities or differences in background, making sure he gets the same quality of care as anyone else.
It's about self-awareness, right? Recognizing how these overlaps could potentially compromise objectivity or fairness, and actively working against that.
Exactly. Proactively managing the dual relationship and reflecting on justice.
All right, final scene, scene 5. This focuses on fidelity, veracity, and ethical decision-making in action. Alex asks Jamie for a favor. He wants a letter for his school to get accommodations for his anxiety.
A common request.
Yeah.
But Jamie doesn't just say yes immediately. First, she consults her supervisor again. Good practice.
Yep. And she checks the center's policy on things like writing letters. She does her homework.
Once she has the green light and understands the guidelines, she agrees. She'll write about his anxiety symptoms.
But here's the key. She writes it truthfully. No exaggeration, just the facts based on her work with him. And she tells Alex what's going to be in the letter before she sends it.
That whole process beautifully illustrates fidelity. She's being trustworthy. She follows through on her agreement responsibly.
And veracity, she's being truthful and accurate in the letter and transparent with Alex about it.
And her method consulting, checking policy, considering the impact, being truthful, being transparent, it mirrors the steps you'd find in formal ethical decision-making models like Forster, Miller, and Davis, or the one by Corey and colleagues. It's showing that process in action.
So this whole case study, it really walks us through how these, sometimes abstract-sounding ethical terms actually play out in real counseling moments.
It does. And hopefully seeing it unfold helps make it stick. Now ready to test that understanding with a few questions.
Let's do it. Time for our NCE-style mini-quiz. Question 1. Jamie is in a session with Alex, and he offhandedly mentions that sometimes he wishes he didn't want to be here anymore. When Jamie asks for more information, Alex denies having any current plan or intent to harm himself. Jamie then consults with her supervisor about this disclosure, but does not breach confidentiality with Alex's parents. What ethical principle is Jamie primarily demonstrating in her decision not to breach confidentiality at this point?
Okay, your options are A, veracity, B, justice, C, autonomy, or D, nonmaleficence.
So again, the question, Jamie doesn't breach confidentiality after Alex's statement, given no plan intent, and consults her supervisor. What principle is demonstrated by not breaching?
The correct answer is D, nonmaleficence. By not immediately breaching confidentiality, especially when there's no immediate clear danger, Jamie avoids the potential harm of damaging the therapeutic trust with Alex. Breaking that trust unnecessarily could shut him down. Consulting ensures she's still addressing the risk appropriately while trying to do no harm to the relationship itself.
Makes sense. Question 2. During a later session, Alex shares with Jamie that he drinks alcohol on weekends and is sexually active with his girlfriend. These disclosures make Jamie personally uncomfortable due to her own deeply held beliefs. However, she continues the session in a non-judgmental manner, focusing on Alex's concerns. What is the most accurate ethical principle guiding Jamie's response in this situation?
Your choices. A, she is upholding veracity. B, she is prioritizing morality over ethics. C, she is applying professional ethics over personal values. Or D, she is violating the ACA Code of Ethics.
So, Jamie feels uncomfortable personally, but stays non-judgmental professionally. What's guiding her response?
The answer is C. She is applying professional ethics over personal values. This is the core conflict. Her personal values are causing discomfort, but her professional ethical obligation to provide non-judgmental care, respect Alex's values, and focus on his well-being takes precedence in her actions as a counselor.
Right. Okay, question 3. Alex asks Jamie to write a letter to his school for anxiety accommodations. Jamie discusses the request with her supervisor and reviews center policies before writing the letter. Which step from an ethical decision-making model like Forrester, Miller, and Davis does this consultation best reflect?
Options. A, identify the problem. B, evaluate possible consequences. C, implement the course of action. Or D, determine the nature and dimensions of the dilemma.
Okay, the question again. Consulting her supervisor before writing the letter reflects which step?
The best fit here is D. Determine the nature and dimensions of the dilemma. Consultation is a key way counselors gather information, explore the ethical issues involved, like confidentiality, accuracy, potential impact, and fully understand the situation before deciding how to act. It's about analyzing the complexities.
Got it. Question 4. Jamie bumps into Alex and his mom at church. She handles it awkwardly at the moment, then discusses it with her supervisor, and later reassures Alex about maintaining professional boundaries. What two ethical concepts are best demonstrated by Jamie's overall handling of this situation? The consultation and the follow-up with Alex.
Your options. A, justice and veracity. B, dual relationships and justice. C, fidelity and informed consent. D, autonomy and confidentiality.
So Jamie's reaction to the church encounter, talking to supervisor, talking to Alex about boundaries, what two concepts are key?
The answer is B, dual relationships and justice. She is directly addressing the potential dual relationship created by the outside contact. Discussing it with her supervisor and setting clear boundaries are ways to manage it ethically. Her internal reflection on potential bias, mentioned earlier in the scene discussion, ties into ensuring justice or fair treatment for Alex.
Okay, last one. Question 5. Jamie agrees to write the school letter for Alex. She writes it honestly, accurately reflecting his symptoms, and she shares the content with Alex before sending it. Which principles are primarily demonstrated by her actions in writing and sharing the letter content?
Options are A, justice and autonomy. B, nonmaleficence and veracity. C, fidelity and veracity. D, autonomy and beneficence.
Final question. Jamie writes the letter honestly and shares the content with Alex. Which two principles shine through?
The answer is C, fidelity and veracity. By following through on her agreement to write the letter after careful consideration, she shows fidelity, faithfulness, honoring commitments. By making sure the letter is truthful and accurate, and by being transparent with Alex about it, she demonstrates veracity, truthfulness.
Phew. Okay, that was a good workout. We really hope that walking through Jamie's journey step by step and then tackling those questions has helped make these ethical principles feel more real and applicable for you.
Absolutely. Seeing them in action in a context like an internship, which many of you might be in or heading towards, hopefully provides valuable insight. It's not just about memorizing definitions.
Not at all. It's about that ethical thinking muscle, understanding the why behind the rules and figuring out how to apply them thoughtfully when things get, complicated or gray.
And maybe take a moment to think, how might your own values interact with professional ethics? How would you navigate a situation like Jamie's church encounter, or the discomfort with Alex's choices?
Good questions to ponder. Well, this is just the start of our deep dives for the NCE Study Guide Patreon library. We hope this look at ethics has been helpful.
Yeah, stay tuned for more explorations designed to help you prepare thoroughly and hopefully feel more confident. Thanks for joining us.
1, 2, 3.
Nice to be in orbit.